Hi, my name is Graham INSCOE, and today on DnD Backstory, we're going to be taking a closer look at the design and mechanics of Chance the Rapper, absurdity personified into an Arcana Cleric. There are two things one needs to understand about Chance's development. The first thing you have to understand is that Chance, like his surprising savior Liechtenstein, is a player character sprung directly from the mind of my dear friend Daniel. And Daniel, like Liechtenstein, is both a genius and an absolute menace. The second fact you, as the player, needs to understand is that Liechtenstein is not in any way, shape, or form a god, a deity, or any sort of celestial or other planar entity. Liechtenstein is a half-elven bard who somehow survived the entirety of the Tomb of Annihilation without casting more than a half-dozen spells, who built up a cult of fanatical followers by rescuing suffering individuals from perilous fates, and who has 110% bought into his own hype. The newly dubbed Chance believes he owes his freedom to Liechtenstein. This is true. He also believes he owes his magical abilities to that self-same charismatic cult leader. This is decisively false. Chance's magic is undeniably divine in nature, and certainly he must have had some connection to this power for quite some time. Your average Kenku is not naturally capable of any minor magical effects, decorative or otherwise, and as a species of humanoid corvids, they certainly do not typically develop plumage or features in any way reminiscent of any species of toucan. The specifics, though, were left vague even when Chance was first engineered and played at the table. And while the details of which deity marked the young Kenku and imbued him with power are important questions for Chance's DM to ponder, it's not necessarily something Chance is worried about himself, at least not yet. He might not metaphorically be the very brightest bird in the flock, but his experiences as the very literal brightest have brought him a great amount of wisdom. At the very least, enough wisdom to make the most out of his life and his gifts without pondering too hard the why of why he stands out. Now, before we get into the crunchy mechanical side of Chance, I do want to explore that bag of colored stones in Chance's backstory and why it enables good roleplay when used reasonably and breaks games when leaned on too heavily. The stones are most easily replicated by rolling for evens or odds on a d20, but this is the best kind of physical prop if that's the kind of thing you're into. Pulling a red or green marble from a bag is the sort of small detail that even the grumpiest player can get behind. When the party has been arguing for 15 minutes about which route to go down, Chance pulling a stone from his bag out of frustration and walking down one path or another can get the party's momentum started back up and lead to more meaningful game time. When Chance is asked to cast a vote on something he's not knowledgeable about or directly invested in, drawing a stone helps him avoid wasting his party's time or risking making a poorly informed decision. It's in his god's hands now, and it'll all turn out for the best. These are great uses of this background quirk because they inspire deeper discussion about Chance's history, philosophy, and decision-making process while simultaneously spurring the party forward in one direction or another. They also offer a good opportunity for players that aren't as comfortable in the spotlight to still contribute meaningfully to party decisions. This mechanic can easily be taken too far, however. Chance, in his original incarnation, used to rely even more heavily on his bag of stones. That is to say, once upon a time, Chance would pull a stone to determine whether he would heal or harm, buff or debuff. He would subsequently pull another stone to see if he would target an ally or an enemy. Don't play Chance like this. Just fucking don't.
Don't do it.
I'm truly begging you.
Don't fucking do it.
Please just trust me on this. It's not gonna end well, and in all likelihood, it'll go as poorly for you and your tablemates as it will for Chance and his party members. Public service announcement now taken care of, let's get into the nuts and bolts stuff. Because a joke of a name by no means results in a joke of a character, and Chance is very good at what he does. What he does, of course, is share his delight in bright magical effects with all of those around him, by buffing his allies and healing those unduly harmed, and by hindering and punishing those who would spurn beauty or harm bystanders. As a cleric, Chance wants a high wisdom over any other skills, allowing him to get the absolute most out of his spellcasting. Constitution and dexterity are our next biggest concerns. As always, Constitution covers HP and concentration saves, and by starting the game with a +2 dexterity, Chance ensures that he's already maximizing the efficiency of any medium armor he wears, from now until level 20. With those stats stats being taken care of, we have just enough points remaining to put strength, intelligence, and charisma all at a neutral +0 modifier. Chance does start the game with a mace and have proficiency in simple weapons, but we're gonna pretty much ignore this. Wearing a shield to increase his armor class is of much greater benefit to the Rapper, and by placing his holy symbol onto his shield, he maintains a free hand for spells with somatic components, without having to worry about dropping a weapon to cast certain spells, or without having to pick up the Warcaster feat. The Guild Artisan background provides proficiency in Insight and Persuasion. With the 2 skills we get from the Cleric list, we're adding Medicine and Religion to the list, and then finally as a Kenku, Chance is also snagging proficiency in Stealth and Sleight of Hand. Stealth proficiency here is taken more to overcome the disadvantage that comes with Scale Mail or Half Plate than it is to make Chance particularly great at sneaking around. The bulk of Chance's playstyle comes from his spellcasting, but we're going to outline the rest of his 1 to 10 features before we look at the Cleric spell list. At level 1, Chance gets his subclass right off the bat. He has no idea what deity or entity has imbued him with their divine power, but we at least know that he's an Arcana Cleric, drawing his power from a god of magic or something similar. In addition to a couple of wizard cantrips, Chance picks up proficiency in the Arcana skill here as well. Level 2 means Channel Divinity. Once per short rest, clerics can choose one in a couple of magical effects to throw at their enemies. All clerics get Turn Undead, an area of effect fear effect against undead that forces them to flee and only flee on a failed save. The Arcana domain provides our second channel divinity, Arcane Abjuration. Another turn effect, this one targets an individual celestial, elemental, fae, or fiend, as opposed to all undead within 30 feet. Level 3 is a dead level, outside of spellcasting, and level 4 is an ASI. Bump that wisdom up to 18 so that we don't have to worry about it later. Level 5 comes with buffs to both Turn Undead and Arcane Abjuration. The former will now destroy undead below a certain challenge rating threshold, and Arcane Abjuration will now banish its targets if they're below that same threshold. At level 6, Arcana Clerics get their Spellbreaker feature. When Chance uses a spell to restore hit points to a creature, he can now simultaneously end a single spell of his choice affecting the target. You're essentially getting to cast Cure Wounds and Dispel Magic at the same time for just a single spell slot. Pretty dope. Next notable feature is level 8's Potent Spellcasting, which allows Chance to add his Wisdom modifier to the damage rolls of his Cleric cantrips. We're also going to go ahead and pick up Warcaster with our level 8 ASI. Chance still doesn't really have any need for a melee weapon, but thanks to Warcaster, he can now replace his opportunity attacks with a spell against the target, and he'll have advantage on his concentration saving throws when taking damage himself. Finally, level 10. Divine Intervention is truly exactly what it sounds like. Roll percentile dice, a d100 if you prefer, and if you get a 10 or lower, Chance's deity will directly intervene in his affairs. The DM will determine the exact nature of this intervention, but at the least you'll be looking at a potential free cast of any cleric spell, regardless of what Chance has prepared or what his highest level spell slot is. If Divine Intervention fails, you can try it again after a long rest. If it succeeds, you have to wait 7 days before it can be used again. Now, spellcasting. Chance's choices in cantrips are more or less set in stone, but other than that, he can completely retool his spell selections every time he takes a long rest. This means that if there's a niche spell on the cleric list you think you might need, like Water Walk, that you can safely put it back into storage at the end of the day, without risking carrying it around until your next level up, like a ranger or sorcerer would have to. It also means that players can and should experiment with Chance's spell selection. The cleric list is full of powerful options, and there's no one correct way to play a cleric. So we're not even going to necessarily outline every spell we've chosen for Chance. Rather, we're just going to highlight a few great choices at various spell levels. Cantrips first, though. Chance starts the game with 3 cantrips from the cleric list and an additional 2 from the wizard list. Guidance is the king of utility cantrips, give a free d4 to any ability check made by you or an ally. Spare of the Dying is a cantrip you hope you'll never have to use, but if you're all out of healing and you have a party member failing death saves, you'll be very grateful you picked it. And then Sacred Flame gives Chance a damage option at close and medium range. From the wizard side of things, we're going with Firebolt for a longer ranged damaging cantrip, and Prestidigitation because I think it's a better fit for the magical wrapping than Minor Illusion would be. Now for leveled spells. First level has Chance with Detect Magic and Magic Missile always prepared, thanks to the Arcana domain. Some highlights from the cleric list at this level include Bless, arguably the best buff spell in the game for several levels to come. 3 people adding d4s to essentially every roll they make. Command is also a strong one, but be careful. Don't get into a semantical argument with your DM over what does or does not constitute a directly harmful command. At my tables, I like the crazy command options, and if a player went for auto defenestrate, I would agree with them, as the leaping out of the window isn't inherently harmful, and the player said nothing about the target having to hit the ground afterwards. Most DMs will vehemently disagree with me here though, and that's okay. Just remember that what the DM says at the table goes, and that's it. If it really bothers you, talk to them after the session. Don't eat up table time arguing. Back to the list. Cure Wounds is a steady, reliable healing, whereas Healing Word heals for less HP, but can be cast on the same turn as Firebolt or Guidance. Guiding Bolt is a reliable radiant ranged attack that grants advantage for the next attack on the target. And finally, Sanctuary is great if you or one of your allies is planning on only healing or buffing your allies, but only really in that circumstances. PC level 3 comes with level 2 spells, and from the wizard list, Chance pulls Magic Weapon and Magic Aura. Not bad, not great. The cleric list at this level is rife with better options. Aid is free health for your allies without concentration, blindness will fuck most enemies right up, enhance ability is great for out of combat utility. Hold person is almost always a strong pick, as is lesser restoration. Silence will almost completely shut down any and all enemy casters if your party can hold them in its area of effect. And finally, spiritual weapon. Consistent damage on your bonus action, no concentration required. PC level 5 brings us to 3rd level spells, including Dispel Magic and Magic Circle as domain spells. On the clerical side of things, Aura of Vitality is technically only optionally on the cleric list, but if your DM allows it, it's pretty much a must-have healing spell. Potentially 20 d6 healing over 10 rounds, absolutely crazy, especially outside of combat. Beacon of Hope is a great option if you're anticipating making a lot of wisdom saves. Mass Healing Word is exactly what it sounds like, and Revivify is Chance's first opportunity to start bringing party members back from the dead. And then there's Spirit Guardians. Slow enemies around you down, deal them damage whenever they get too close. Chance doesn't necessarily want to find himself deep into melee combat, but if he does, this spell will turn him into a 15-foot radius Divine Blender. When we get 4th level spells, PC level 7, Arcane Eye and Secret Chest as domain spells, we find our list of viable picks starting to shrink a bit. Banishment is stupidly good for removing a single target from the field, temporarily or potentially permanently. Death Ward will keep your party's meat shield up and fighting for a little longer than they'd normally be able to, and Freedom of Movement is excellent if you find yourself underwater or consistently fighting through difficult terrain. For 5th level domain spells, we finally get a couple of solid options again in Planar Binding and Teleportation Circle. On the divine end of things, Commune is a way to get information from a divine source. Flame Strike is nothing notable, except for the fact that it's Chance's only real area of effect damage option. Doesn't really make it any better, but it's there. Geesh, oh shit, I have to look up how to pronounce this word, because it's Irish. Gesh is a weird one, but with the right setting and the right DM, it can be devastating, especially when dealing with low HP politicians and corrupt officials. Greater Restoration and Mass Cure Wounds are bigger versions of spells we've seen before. Raise Dead gives you more than a minute to bring your dead allies back. Scrying lets you spy from a distance, and Holy Weapon will massively increase the damage output of an ally making multiple weapon attacks. That's Chance for you, a meme of a cleric that packs a surprising amount of power and utility into a pretty ridiculous package. Just remember one final important fact. The better you support your party with our colorful bird, the more of Chance's bullshit they'll be willing to put up with. We sincerely hope that this video helped you see the character behind the goofy name and helped to explain how to get good mileage out of him from a mechanical standpoint. Like this video and subscribe so we can keep throwing characters and breakdowns at you, and with all the options available to clerics, I'm sure I'll see you in the comments telling me what I missed. Also on that note, Sanctuary and Spirit Guardians doesn't work. Hasn't since they eroded Sanctuary. So miss me with that one, yeah? Thanks for watching! If you'd like to support our channel and gain access to some other fun D&D Backstory content, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description. To find all of our other characters and how-to videos, head over to the channel by clicking D&D Backstory below.